The more you travel, the more you get a little picky about your gear, right? Well, today we're going to hear from Gemma and Daniel Ng, two lifelong travelers who became parents and realized that in a world filled with luggage, there wasn't a travel diaper bag that did everything they needed it to do. So they founded a company, No Reception Club, and they crafted a backpack called the Getaway Bag, and it went on to take the traveling parent world by storm. I'm Aislinn Green, and this is Unpacked, the podcast that unpacks one tricky topic in travel each week. And today, Gemma and Daniel share the terrible flight that inspired their first bag, their hard-won advice for traveling parents, and what No Reception Club really means to them. Gemma and Daniel, welcome to Unpacked. It's so lovely to have you here today. Could you tell me a little bit about what it is that you do? Like, what is No Reception Club, and how did you wind up sitting on the couch doing what you're doing today?
Hello. Well, this is Gemma speaking. We are a travel goods company with a mission to empower parents to go on more family adventures. But on top of that, we're also a community of travelers who have entered the world of parenthood. And we have a firm belief that travel becomes even more important with little ones and not less.
Daniel, is there anything that you want to add, or do you want to share the founding story? I'm sure that there's a travel story at the heart of this.
It's funny because when we think about, whenever you were last at an airport or maybe at a pit stop, like, do you remember seeing parents there? And they always looked like, at least for us, they always look like, oh, we need help.
Yes,
and how can I help those parents? And then fast forward, to our first kid, we became those parents. And it really dawned on us during a flight that we took to Hawaii with our first. And it was just so painful. Everything that went wrong. But then, of course, you get to the destination and then you go full circle feeling like, oh, that was so worth it. But it felt like there was this hole of why isn't there a brand that is there to make it easier so that parents can go on adventures, so that there isn't so much fear, anxiety, stress around it. It is such a valuable part of being a family, is, having those memories on trips together. And that really became the genesis of No Reception Club. It is being able to address that gap in the market.
And this was 2019. So this is pre-pandemic when people could really travel. And so we did a bunch of road trips and flights with him. And on this trip, we specifically felt like the biggest pain point on that flight was our bag, which was just this bottomless pit, very, very stylish, cool bag from Japan. And we are, won't go into, we're huge bag nerds. We love that stuff. And so when we found this bag, we were like, oh, this is amazing. It's beautiful. But like functionally, it wasn't giving what it needed to for us, especially as it related to travel. So when we got off that flight, like that very night, we had this whole conversation where we kind of said, given our professional backgrounds, and so my background, I spent over a decade working in fashion and product development, whereas Daniel, on the flip side, has a much more analytical background working in e-commerce and in finance. And so we thought, if we couldn't find solutions for this, we knew that many other people were searching for it as well. And that was sort of like the impetus to start getting it going. And truly, that was January 2020. Within a month of that, we kind of just started going for it, started working on it. I quit my job. Daniel started spending his nights and weekends on it. And funny enough, just as the pandemic really started, and we were hilariously working on a travel goods company when nobody was traveling.
I want to go back to that first flight, and there are a lot of bags out there. I am not a parent, so I think you might have to walk me through like what specifically was going wrong on that flight, and what did you find that was missing? Like, how is it possible that, in 2019, with all the bags that are out there, there wasn't one that was providing, parental needs?
Well, we love this question. We absolutely know there are tons of incredible diaper bags on the market for day-to-day use. But when you travel, these more complicated needs come up because your bag is expected to serve you for such an extended period of time. So for us, and given our research, talking to hundreds of parents, the main things that you're doing with your kid on a travel day when you're carrying this travel diaper bag is you're going to need to figure out how to feed them over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
You're going to need to have extra clothes, but also knowing that you might be trapped on a 12-hour flight. So you might need more clothes than usual. You will need to put the soiled clothing somewhere. It's not just a given like, oh, I'll just throw it in the back seat of the car and then I'll throw it in the laundry when I get home. You might not have access to anything like that for 20 hours. Who knows? You need to also have a lot of entertainment things readily accessible for them. And then, of course, things like changing their diapers. So that's the fourth thing. And then finally, what about all your stuff? What about everything you're carrying? And so we couldn't find a bag on the market that could organize and carry all these items in a way that was easy to pack, but equally important, easily accessible. When you're on a flight, that real estate of under the seat in front of you is so important and also not that big. So we wanted to make sure that the bag that we were bringing, not only does it fit under there, but had accessibility points so that when it's lying under there, you can still reach everything. And the thing with most traditional backpacks is they are kind of one big cave that you access from the top. And that makes sense in a lot of places, but it's not great in a plane because if you imagine that little area between the seat in front of you and you're trying to get something very specific for your little one, and you don't want to have to pull up the whole bag, stand it upright vertically, open it up, and begin digging in what's probably not a very well-lit space. And so what we did was one of the primary ways you get into the bag is from the long side of the bag, your right side of the bag. And because you can enter it from the side of the bag, it essentially can remain underneath the seat in front of you. You unzip the entire side and you can access the entire main compartment. And I would say the third major thing that sticks out is when you are traveling and little accidents and messes happen. That's something that is easy to deal with when you're sort of just on the go, just running to the park. But when you're locked in a plane or a car ride or a bus ride for 12 hours, you need a place to stick soiled items. And so we also added that into our bag, somewhere where you could just shove things in that were a little messy that you didn't want to touch everything else. And the fourth thing, even though I said that was the third thing, which isn't a functional thing, but it was more of a aesthetic thing, was we felt a lot of the diaper bags at the time were a little bit or a lot biased towards mom carrying it or someone with more overtly feminine tastes. We wanted to have a bag that we would be happy switching between the two of us because, we're both carrying stuff for the kids. And we didn't want something also that screamed, I am a diaper bag. We wanted the bag to look just like a cool backpack, like all the backpacks in our too big collection of backpacks, where you wouldn't even know it was a diaper bag until you opened it up and started seeing these features that only parents would need.
Absolutely. And I imagine that it's easy to clean too. Like I'm picturing the soiled compartment, like you need to be able to wipe all this out at the end. And a lot of backpacks don't have that.
Yes, the soiled compartment is very, very easy to clean. It's made of a water-resistant, odor-resistant liner that you can just wipe out completely. And the whole bag we did design to be easy to clean. And it actually can, as needed, be put into the machine, the washing machine on a gentle cycle.
Well, congratulations on your success. And it's 2025 and here you are. As you've developed this robust product line, you've also developed a travel community. So was that something that you added later? Like how did that travel community become part of your business?
Yeah, the travel community was always something that we wanted our brand to ultimately fulfill the mission of, how do we empower parents to go on adventures with their little ones? The most important part of that is creating category defining products that really offer the best quality organization and being able to solve the real pain points that parents have. But it's also, how do we help parents in other ways? So included in that would be, a lot of the resources that we put together online on our Instagram. We have packing guides, we have blog content, and really in-depth how-to articles. But then in addition to that, it's also creating a community where ultimately it's about parents helping each other too, and really crowdsourcing. How do you travel in a better way? I think No Reception Club draws in a particular type of person. It's someone who loves travel, but then also knows that there are really great solutions out there to make those adventures easier. And so when you draw in that particular person, they're probably experts in a lot of areas too. So our community ends up being this starting point when you plan your trip. Just yesterday, for example, someone said, "Hey, I'm traveling to Japan. Like, should I bring a stroller or not?" And that's such a hard thing to Google, right? Because one person's opinion won't really answer that for you. But you end up getting 10 plus comments from people who have brought a stroller to Japan. What were the pros and cons, and really long, detailed answers. And then you hear that and you really get to feel more confident about the choices you make. And really, I think travel in itself can be anxiety inducing, whether you're a parent or not a parent. And if you just go into it feeling confident, I think that trip ends up being more successful.
Well, I'd like to get a little more philosophical. But first, you guys have 2 children now, right? And how old are they?
We have one who is 5.5, so he's in kindergarten, and we have our younger one is a couple weeks from turning 3, so still a toddler, but on the verge, and obviously we have all the feels about that.
Yeah, I bet.
It's been really great because now we've been traveling with kids for the full 5.5 years and getting to experience the shift from doing everything and all kinds of travel with one to then doubling numbers and then figuring out the whole new configuration of and the varying needs of 2 kids and how they're growing, and all of that has been really, really great, of course, on such a personal level, and also to understand the different needs of other families.
So you've traveled with your kids from day one, which is so inspiring. And we've talked a lot about this at Afar. Like, is it worth taking really young children who may not remember the experience, especially on big trips? And a lot of people that I work with who are parents feel like it is worth it because they're raising a traveler. So even if the kid doesn't remember, they're being shaped by the experience. So I'm curious, why did you make traveling with your little ones a priority?
This is definitely something that has come up a lot, even since when we became pregnant and we started hearing from many people saying, travel now, get those trips out because you're not going to go anywhere for 7 years, or you're going to go to just Disneyland, which, by the way, Disneyland is very fun. But without going too far into it, we have been a couple for almost 20 years. And most of those years, we were not parents. And we loved traveling as individuals and also together. That was a huge part of our relationship because almost 10 of our years together were long distance. So we had a lot of traveling to meet up, but also, if we weren't going to be living in the same city, we certainly used the opportunity to go on adventures. And so I say that only because when we were pregnant and expecting, we knew that we were going to travel. We were literally planning our first trip, asking our doctor, how soon can you put this baby on the plane? Googling how many immunizations do they need? Of course, there are the benefits to us. It's such an important part of our identity and an important part of how we feel that we get to grow as people through travel, through new experiences, through meeting new people, through breaking out of the norm. And we feel that the benefits that we personally have from travel are also things that our children can benefit from, whether or not they can tie memories or characteristics that they form directly to, oh, it's because we went to X. That, no, of course not. But the fact that our children are able to go on different trips and adventures, which is such a blessing and a privilege that we're able to bring them on, we strongly believe it is help informing their characters and who they will become. And I think one of the number one things that stands out is adaptability. And the more that we're able to bring children on different types of adventures, the more they are almost like exposed and tested in a way that helps them realize they can be happy and live in different environments. They don't need to necessarily be in the comfort of their own home with all of their blackout curtains and I like this bowl and I need to have these 10 stuffed toys in my crib and all these like specific things that are great. And same with routines and schedules and all of that, which again, of course, children do thrive in that most of the time, but going on adventures and stepping out of their daily life is for us and then also for them a great way to help build that adaptability. And when you do it when they're so young, they don't even realize it's happening. You know, it's a lot more natural. I thought of this quote that we had heard, which was, we read to our babies, to our toddlers, to our children. We read and read and read them so many stories. We don't think that it's pointless to read to them just because they don't remember every storyline, right? It's still enriching them. It's still feeding them and growing them in ways that are super important.
I love how Gemma put it, which is we all want to think about being thoughtful about their character, right? The character of our children. And specifically, we want them to be curious. We want them to be empathetic. We want them to be resilient. And we really kind of think about travel as this way. It's a crash course in accelerating all of those different parts of one's character, because on a per day basis, you're going to be confronted with those things at a much higher volume than regular life. At an early age, you're exposed to different ways that people talk, different ways that people eat. You know, here we use chopsticks, or here we use our hands, here we use, fork and knife. At that early age where you don't have sort of biases at that point, and it just becomes the norm that there are differences that exist in the world. I think we both independently have memories of sitting on a bus and doing bus tours and being shepherded to different places and as a kid, did I think that was the most thrilling way to spend, a day? Probably
not.
But then fast forward to today, we both independently ended up getting international business degrees. We've lived in different countries outside of Canada, and we started a travel brand. And, would we point to those trips as a kid as being an influence? Like, I think it'd be hard to say that didn't play a role. And maybe that's the last thing is related to family, is that seems to be one of those very few things that you can share as a family over and over and over again. We always hear about, there's a certain age where your kids will probably want little to do with you as parents, but travel seems to be a uniting, you can almost call it a hobby, but a shared thing that you can look forward to over and over, and it can span generations. You could travel with your grandparents, you can travel with your cousins, you can travel. And so to foster that in an early age, we think that's super exciting as a concept, and just being that thing that you look forward to every year, and hopefully we're all planning it together. And even when they move out, it's something that they would want to do with us.
And to prove that, we do have multiple multi-generational trips that we have done and that we are going to do. And, all parents know the greatest travel hack is grandparents. And it truly is the best. And I think, sometimes you see on social media this idea of, I only have 18 summers with my child, this, that, it's so depressing. I have to make them all count. That's not true. I mean, we're nearly 40. We still go on summer trips with our parents. You don't
Yeah.
only have 18 summers. And as Daniel said, when you build in the normalcy of we're a family, we're a team, we go on adventures together, that doesn't stop when they are 18. It can continue on forever. You're sort of building that, I don't want to say habit, but a little bit. Like, this is one of the ways that our family comes together and spends time together.
Okay, so you two have learned a lot over the years. What is your best travel advice? Like, what do you wish the first time parents Gemma and Daniel knew 5 years ago?
I can't help but start by talking about packing. So I would say the number one thing that I usually do starting out with packing for the kids, I try not to pack too much. And an early parent's fatal flaw when traveling is bringing everything. And when I think of our very first trip, which was a road trip, we were living in the Bay Area and we drove to LA with many stops along the way and back with our 3-month-old. And we literally brought his bathtub. Like, we brought a bathtub, which is, while small, is quite large, right? We brought a full-size activity gym. So that's one of those things, they lie on their back and they're sort of batting and swinging toys above them. We brought so many things. It was unbelievable. Fast forward to our first trip with our second child when he was 3 months old, and we just bathed him in the kitchen sink, lining it with towels. And so I guess the first tip is don't overpack. Do not overpack, especially in terms of large gear. Your child needs so much less than you think. And I think that is a little bit of what we touched on, but maybe not deeply, but that traveling and the adaptability that your child learns and that you learn shows you how little they really need. All they really need are their clothes and some items that will make them feel familiar when they're sleeping. Sleep, of course, is something you really want to protect, but the toys and all the extra things, like if you have something that's like swinging them to sleep, or you don't really need to bring all those extra things. You can kind of pack 15% of what you might think as a new parent. The second tip I would have related to packing is to think about the number of days that you're going to be there and how frequently you can do laundry. We often stay at Airbnbs. It's a lot easier to stay in places like that where there's a kitchen and a laundry and things like that. And then you can kind of allow yourself to just pack about a week's worth of clothing, which fits very easily into, our own hideaway carry-on duffel, and know that as long as I'm doing laundry about once a week, which as a parent is very, very infrequent. If you're only doing it once a week, you're doing something right, because the rest of us seem to be doing it almost every day. And what I do and what I find the most helpful is organizing your bag in a way that mimics how you organize things at home. So if you're someone who puts the t-shirts together, the onesies together, the pants together, the sweaters together, do that in the luggage. Do that also so that it's quick for you to know what you need, retrieve it, live out of your bag. And eventually also, which is a benefit as your child gets older, they can dress themselves out of their own bag and kind of just be more independent. I would also say, in terms of packing things, when you're thinking about the actual flight or the journey, I always think in terms of 1.5 times what you think. So when you're just getting from your home to the destination, bring about 1.5 times as many diapers as you think you would need for that to cover that duration of time. 1.5 times as many outfits, backup things. Do they normally spill on themselves twice? Let's assume it'll be 3 times.
Yeah.
Something like that. You're not going overboard, but you're having contingency. You're having contingency plans. 1.5 times as much food as you think you'll need, because there are always delays when you don't expect it. We recently flew to Toronto. It's a 5-hour flight. We got to the airport. We were delayed 5 hours. Who knew? Who knew? Did we have the stuff we needed? Yes, it ended up being fine, but just always sort of expecting that the journey will be longer than what you think really will take away a lot of the stress. So in one way, I'm saying pack 1.5 times for the journey, but when you're actually at the accommodation, do not overpack.
Yeah.
That's when you're going to be fine.
We've also had experiences where they've lost our luggage at the destination. So we took a trip to Indonesia, and then we arrived, and all our luggage was missing, and I think normally that would have been a moment of panic, but then luckily we had all of the essential stuff for the kids in our carry-on. And so I think having the right gear and making sure that, that gear works for you during that journey so that you can be as stress-free as possible. A lot of times the hacks are just, around like, how do you decrease your anxiety for that trip? And I think kind of investing that time and energy into that, I think goes a long way. And then I think the last point I would end on in terms of other hacks is crowdsourcing different tips. One challenge that felt a bit difficult was my searches went from, what were the coolest, places to go in a given destination. But then we're kind of like not optimizing we still want cool, but we also want something where, our kids aren't going to be super disruptive to the other guests. We want something kid friendly, what's easy to get into, what locations are best. So it's just kind of those micro tips where you can crowdsource them in different places. I think you can learn from a lot before landing there and then being surprised about what's going to happen.
Yeah, like something as simple perhaps as, do you bring a stroller to Japan, right? Like you said,
Yes.
And then you can make your own decision based on what you're seeing out there. And you're right. I mean, doing an event with a kid versus just another adult, two completely different experiences, right? Even dining out, I'm sure. Gemma, you had mentioned that sleep is one of the things that you really try to prioritize and protect when you all travel. So do you have tips, especially as you start to get into jet lag, and that adds another layer, on how you try to protect your kids' sleep as much as possible?
This is a hot topic, and it's awesome that you brought it up. So I'm going to answer this in two phases. So in terms of preparing for a new time zone and being on a flight where they might have to nap, well, let's tackle that first. And then we can talk about how do we protect it when they're actually in the hotel. And we are not professional sleep consultants. We have traveled a lot with babies to, the under 6 set. So we do have a lot of experience, and we've spoken to a lot of people. So this is where that is coming from. First, I would say we do not force them onto a new time zone when we're on the way there. When we're on the flight, we do not try to get our kids to sleep when they're not tired on the flight. Of course, we do try to schedule flights around sleep wherever we can, but delays happen. But we do try. And to help foster the best kind of sleep, we bring items that will help make it feel a little bit more familiar like home. So we are bringing a portable sound machine to help mask some of the ambient noise and the announcements, the nonstop announcements that seem to happen on a flight. We are bringing sleep sacks or a comfort blanket or a couple like Loveys, the bed buddy type toys onto the flight, and we'll bring a favorite book, and we will go through a truncated version, but still a version of our whole bedtime routine on the flight. And something that really helps is ahead of the flight, we let our children know, not as much now because they're familiar with it, but we let them know what to expect. So we're going to get on the flight. The announcements will come on. We're going to eat a fun dinner. We'll have activities, this and that. And then we're going to go to sleep on the flight. And, kids love to know what to expect. And it's like exciting for them that the thing that you said was going to happen is happening. They feel like they're telling the future.
I think one mistake we've made in the past is, I think, to your point about not forcing them onto a different schedule, or even just forcing anything, is just following the cues of the plane itself. And so I think we can all picture sort of, this is mealtime, a lot of commotion. And then there's also a part of the flight where all the lights go off and there's no service. And we kind of usually follow that, because we've done the opposite, where we put our baby to bed and we're like, yes, we did it. And then all of a sudden it's like, bing, boom. And then, carts come out, food's coming out, and they're saying, what would you like to drink? And it's like, can't you see that the baby's
My
sleeping
baby.
here?
Yeah.
So it's just, I think the whole look of horror is like what you're about to see. A lot of that is avoidable by just sort of following the cues of the plane. And I think as a result, what ends up happening is when you land at the destination, we sort of follow a similar pattern where we follow the cues of the place we're at. And so we'll set the 5 different alarms at 7 or 8 a.m. to make sure that we're out of our funk, and then be exposed to as much daylight as possible to really do a lot more outdoor activities at the early days.
It just helps like reset their like circadian rhythm, similar to when we put them to bed on the plane when the lights go down and the service ends. It's giving all those cues do give them sleep pressure, in the same way that being outside in the sun doing something active is giving them awake pressure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's great advice for adults too. We need routine and to get on a schedule quickly as well. Well, you mentioned that sleep is a hot button topic. So let's throw another one out there. How do you handle electronics and screen time?
What I feel like I can't help but bring up is our company's name is No Reception Club. And the spirit behind our name is that we do want to encourage parents, and we really meant parents, but I think as time goes, we mean the whole family, to unplug from their screens, from their day-to-day responsibilities, which for adults often involves screens, so that we can be fully in the moment and present as a family in the experience with each other, creating these memories. Having said that, we very much understand when you're on that 14-hour flight to Hong Kong, you're not going to not turn on the screen on the seat in front of you.
Yeah.
So I think it really comes down to a balance. We love to pack activities and toys. We usually bring some kind of building toy, some sort of like magnetic building toy. We bring an art toy, whether it's some sort of drawing pad, markers, things like that. We always bring Play-Doh or another sort of sensory type object. And books. We bring books, whether it's I Spy books, sticker activity books, and things like that. And whatever our child is interested in at the moment, we might try to get little, our youngest one was very, very into dogs for a while. So we bought a bunch of tiny little dogs for just to open and discover and things like that. So as much as possible, we are bringing a diverse number of activities for them to play, and certainly a lot of snacks, which cannot be understated how much eating can take up time on a flight. At the same time, we do watch some of the screens. We think there is a place for that. I think what we do encourage is that shouldn't be the first thing you do. You certainly don't want to do that as your first move. That's got to be your last move. That is, we've already gone through everything in the backpack. You cannot eat anymore. You did your nap. That is that special treat at the end. And I think there's a lot of benefit to when your kids don't get a ton of screen time. I know some people who they don't do any screen time for 2 weeks, 1 week leading up to the trip. So it's a real treat on the plane.
Yeah.
When Daniel Tiger shows up, your kid is pretty happy. They've been a little bit starved of their screen time, which which there's no downside to that, right?
Yeah, I'd say like with anything in life, there's always the plan and then there's what happens in reality. And
Yeah.
I think we very much, go in with that plan that Gemma describes, but we're also believers of, anything goes on travel days. Really the goal is, get to the destination and when being a team. And so if that episode or, an extra X minute or whatever, however screen time helps you get through that moment, anything goes. Chocolate, new toy. It's really anything goes.
So when you get to your destination, then do you really try to make travel and screen time is like a minimal part of that so that you're a little bit more unplugged?
Honestly, yes. It really is our goal. And when we are all awake as a family, we try to not have any screens. We try really hard to have no screens when we travel. And we find that there are a couple benefits of that. One is you're really present. You're really there. You're really creating memories together.
I think day-to-day life, sometimes you hear a notification, email, text message, and it's just so natural. And I'm so guilty of it, of just pulling on my phone. But I think our kids see that, right? You're playing with them and then all of a sudden, even if it's just for 2 seconds, right? But the 2 seconds, you're taken out of that moment with your child and then you're brought in and then maybe you feel like you didn't miss a beat, but I think they still notice it. And I think something special about trips is, yes, seeing new things, tasting new foods, meeting different people around you, but ultimately it's that undivided attention time with their parents too. And it also, I think, subconsciously allows us to feel the place more too. I think a fun origin story about our name is that we came up with this company name before we knew what the business was going to be. And I think a lot of that stemmed from the fact that Gemma mentioned we did a lot of long distance. And at that time, to reach each other, we used calling cards.
Oh
So
my gosh.
you can imagine like dating ourselves, right? But there was no real ubiquitous internet access to internet. And I think maybe we romanticized that time a little bit, but you truly didn't know what was happening in the news. You didn't know what was happening at home, but you were just in that place. You were immersed in that place. And then you came home feeling like you had time to think about, what kind of things you liked about yourself that you wanted to keep doing on this trip, and how do you bring those pieces back home with you. And I think that applies to family travel as well, as what are some of those things you did as a family that you really loved, and new traditions, and you can bring that back home. And I think travel in many ways, in character and daily life, can shape who we are as people.
I could not agree more. Well, thank you both so much for being here today and for sharing your wisdom as parents and as product designers.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us. This was such a great conversation.
We had so much fun. Thank you.
And that was Gemma and Daniel, founders of No Reception Club. In the show notes, we've included links to their very helpful social media handles and to their website. And here's a special bonus. Afar listeners can get $25 off of any purchase at noreceptionclub.com using the code AFAR25. You'll also find that code in the show notes. Next week, we'll be back with advice on traveling to Rome and avoiding the crowds with journalist Laura Itzkowitz, who has lived in the city for years.
My friend, Elisa Valeria Bove, she once described Rome to me as a sort of mother figure. Mama Roma. Wise, sage. Rome is a city that has been around for thousands of years. She's seen it all. She's lived through it all. She knows who she is and what's best for her. And she probably knows what's best for you, frankly, because she's an Italian mama. And she definitely wants to make sure you're well fed.
Ready for more unpacking? Visit afar.com and be sure to follow us on Instagram and X. We are at Afar Media. If you enjoyed today's exploration, I hope you'll come back for more great stories. Subscribing always makes that easy. And be sure to rate and review the show on your favorite podcast platforms. It helps other travelers find it. And if you ever want to ask a question or suggest a topic for coverage, you can reach out to us at afar.com/feedback or email us at unpacked@afar.com. This has been Unpacked, a production of Afar Media. The podcast is produced by Aislinn Green and Nikki Galteland. Music composition by Chris Collin. And remember, the world is complicated. We're here to help you unpack it.